Did you know up to 10 million Americans are affected by lymphedema? Yet it remains one of the most unrecognized and misunderstood conditions in healthcare. How do tattoos impact your lymphatic health? Well, join me and let's take a look at a young lady's challenge after getting a tattoo, then having to deal with lymphedema and share her story along the way. My name is Summer and I'm the host of Ways to Wellness, and we are here with Miss Laura Schwank. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's talk about you are a patient with lymphedema, and so we want to know about your story and how it got started. So can you explain that to us a little bit?
So I guess my story is a little bit more unique than the traditional route to lymphedema. So when I was 19, I felt rebellious and decided to get a tattoo, kind of like your normal thing. Instead of doing the mid 2000s typical tattoo of a tramp stamp, I decided to go on my foot and I did a white ink tattoo. In, I would say, 24 hours, I started seeing symptoms of lymphedema. It took them actually months to get it diagnosed that it was lymphedema. And swelling just started at the base of my foot since it was on the tattoo was on top of my foot and just slowly worked its way up. So that was my first encounter of lymphedema.
So when you first started the swelling, they didn't tell you it was lymphedema. You just kind of was dealing with swelling. How long was that before you got diagnosed?
It was, let's see. So I got the tattoo in June of 2009, and I didn't get a lymphedema diagnosis until about December of 2009. Part of the things was they did a ton of tests to kind of like rule out different things since it's kind of odd for a 19-year-old to present with lymphedema symptoms. And so they were doing like x-rays, CAT scans, CT scans. I think I got every sort of scan possible known to man. I remember drinking radioactive barium at one point for one of the tests. Two big things that tasted like horrible. And so, yeah, it was not your traditional way of getting lymphedema or your diagnosis of getting it. And then finally, they gave me that diagnosis of it because it's odd for a 19-year-old who has no history of it, no family history of it, to come out and get lymphedema from it.
So explain to us, okay, we know that you got the tattoo and you said about the white ink. So what's the difference in the white ink?
So when it comes to white ink versus black ink tattoos, from just, I guess, after researching post fact, white ink tattoos are a little bit thicker than ink. So it has a higher possibility of, I guess, kind of clogging up your lymphatic system. It's interesting because depending on what doctor you talk to, right now with like my medical stuff, it is diagnosed as primary lymphedema, but some doctors say it might be secondary lymphedema since a tattoo is very superficial, which also is your lymphatic system. So depending on what doctor or what notes you're reading, it might be a secondary diagnosis tattoo or a primary. So
Okay, being a lymphedema specialist, I was able to start seeing you in one of your sessions. But when you first started the lymphatic drainage massage as an alternative therapy, were you seeing it in the hospital or did you kind of have to find your own therapist?
So that's an interesting question right there, because what I kind of encountered was, I don't want to say a doctor is lack of education since they did go to school and have the residency and all of that. However, with my experience when it came to getting treated with lymphedema, when I got the diagnosis, I was told, "Hey, you got lymphedema. Congrats," essentially. But there was no guidance on how to treat it. And to be honest, with lymphedema, there isn't any, there's ways to make the symptoms go away, but there's no actual diagnosis of how to treat it to make it go away. So basically, you're just masking the symptoms with every sort of treatment possible when it comes to lymphedema. So you're not addressing the root cause of lymphedema, you're just addressing the symptoms to make them go down. But the doctor basically did not tell me about MLD, did not tell me about wrapping, did not tell me about compression. So I was diagnosed in 2009. By 2011, my lymphedema got very unbearable, to be honest. Like my skin was super tight. I felt like if I just scratched my skin like that, like my whole leg would just explode and come on down since it was just so tight. And how I kind of got introduced to the typical MLD treatment and wrapping and stuff was my mom not transferred, but my mom moved to a different hospital in Virginia. I grew up in Iowa. She moved and got a job in Virginia, and she was talking to the director of physical therapy, Dr. Crabtree, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we have a lymphedema clinic here. Your daughter should check it out."
Oh,
And
wow.
that's then where I got introduced to Pam, who was my first MLD person, and she's like, "You need to wrap it. Like, you need decompression. You need all of this." And I'm thinking like, huh? And she's like, "Yeah, like you need to start wrapping and all of this." And this was the first time she's like, at that point I had no wrapping, I had no pump, I had no compression. She got me onto a compression that was knee high. Um, and kind of started me like that, got me wrapping at night. I remember the first time I wore compression overnight, I like had to just rip it off halfway through because I just was not used to it. It was so uncomfortable. And she's like, "Well, at least you didn't cut it," since she had patients just get scissors and cut it right off. Since it
Oh,
is a
wow.
different experience and something you do need to get used to, especially with sleeping and everything. So, yeah, even also, this is now kind of rambling, but like my first time flying with lymphedema, I had no idea that the cabin pressure change like makes
Yes.
it worse. No idea what that. So I'm like flying over to Pennsylvania and I'm like, man, my leg hurts. And I call the doctor. He's like, "Oh yeah, you need to get a pressure hose." It's like, seriously? Like, you couldn't warn me? Like,
So it sounds like, when we're talking about, ways to wellness and we're talking about alternative therapies, it does seem like there's a disconnect with healthcare community, that there is a lack of knowledge and understanding of post-treatment cares, which is something that we want to talk about. That's why we're bringing it up. Basically, you were at the point where you didn't have any education or information, and then you end up finding someone who was able to do that. So talk to us about, because it started in your foot, but when you got to the point of wrapping, how far had your lymphedema went? Was it below the knee?
it was already up my leg. Yeah, and I actually it was my full left leg, and then she got me to go knee high, which like at first I can get very stubborn. But then I don't know what I should have gone was straight to thigh high, because at the knee high it then cinched at the knee and caused more flowage issues at the knee. So it took me and so I was knee high, so 2011. Then I was a knee high for 1 year, and then I went back up to where I went to school, college in Rhode Island. And then I was up there for that summer of 2012, and I went and I got treatment there. And she was like, "No, you need a thigh high." And she convinced me to get a thigh high, which I'm glad I ended up switching, because that's helped my knee blockage. Since later down my journey, I ended up having a lymphoscintigraphy, and it does show that I do have blockage at the knee.
Okay.
So
I'm glad, thank goodness that she was able to help you with that and she had knowledge of that. So you went to a physical therapist. As we know, some lymphedema and lymphatic drainage specialists are physical therapists as well as massage therapists. There are some nurses who were able to do that. So we were glad that you were able to get that treatment. So after you started wrapping, when did you started having MLD, manual lymphatic drainage massages?
it was the same time. So
So you got that at the same
I
time?
went from having nothing to having all this stuff, all this knowledge, learning more about it. Like I remember since Pam was like my first person ever with MLD and introducing it to me. Like she's just like typical sweet Southern lady and all of that. And I joke around that at 19 I got the disease of an old person. And she gave me this packet, and me being at that time I was 21. She gave me this packet on my first visit with her, and she's like, "All right, read this packet." And let's be honest, we don't really read the packets the doctor gives us unless it's like you're dying of cancer or something at that level. When it's lymphedema, it's like, whatever, I'm stuck with it. So I didn't read it. And a few weeks later, I was out and I was with some friends and we went in a hot tub, and I jumped in and I'm like, "Man, my leg's getting tight, all of this." And the next day I went to PM and I'm like, "Yeah, I went in the hot tub and like my leg just got very big and like swelled up and all that." And she's like, "Laura, did you read that packet I gave you?" And I'm like, "No, I did not." She's like, "It told you not to go in hot tubs." So
Yes.
yeah. So that was the first experience of learning of one, I probably should read those packets and everything. And two, adding to my journey of lymphedema, since I went from 0 to 100 with trying to take care of it. And having all my mistakes right, probably mostly in front and just learning about it.
Yeah, so we've already learned from you that paying attention, that you were aware of your situation, and then also reading the package, and then basically being an advocate for yourself. So we are
Yeah.
grateful that you were able to do that as well. What has been the most challenging aspect of managing your day-to-day life with your lymphedema?
I would say the most challenging, and this is a continuous ongoing thing. And when you get to join the train and the club of having this journey, I would
Mhm.
say the most challenging would be like probably the emotional toll it takes, and that kind of goes on what Regin because you're doing a lot of lifestyle changes that you did not sign up for. It might have been a lifestyle change that, since the most common way is getting it through cancer or a symptom of cancer, that you're trying to save your life one way. However, then you're sacrificing another way that it's more lifelong. Um, so emotionally, I would say that because I go from being able just to like literally roll in bed after a shower and going to sleep to then having to pump for 45 minutes. Sometimes you fall asleep during that. So then you're waking up from REM, having to put your like night cast on, which is a more extensive compression thing to hold the compression down, then trying to go back to sleep. And like sometimes when I'm out, I start at like, technically I go against what's recommended, but I've talked to another doctor and he kind of agrees with me. You need to go more than 45 minutes since I'm so severe. But then it's like you're just constantly getting interrupted on the sleep cycle. And then when you go in and like in the morning, then you then have to add like 20 minutes to get your compression hose on. Because those things are not easy. And there's like when you sometimes get to like have days where you're like, man, it would be nice just to roll out of bed and not have that extra 20, 30 minutes of prepping your leg because it's a whole prep since you have the foam, you have to make sure your skin is moist. You have to make sure like you don't have any like calluses and stuff on it. And there's rubbing, so you have to put the stuff like right now I've been using KT tape to help with the rubbing. It's just all the tedious things line up and you're like, I just want my old life where you can roll out of
Mhm.
bed. So
Yeah, I get
emotionally is
that.
where it takes a toll.
So emotionally is one of the things that we deal with as massage therapists as well. Do you feel like even when you get your massages or your pumping and you finally get that time to relax, does that help you in your emotional and in your everyday being?
Yeah, like having MLD and having just the extra stuff with the leg, just weekly and getting that routine, it does contribute to some relief because sometimes pumps can only do so much. And like when it's really hot, like you can do so much. And it's just the pump only gets to like there's 26 chambers in the pump. So it can only get so much or so far where MLD treatment will get to areas that a pump that might not necessarily get to. So it's kind of more of getting the loose more, I mean, getting the skin more looser, not as tight. You always want soft fluid instead of hard fluid, getting your fluid back to being soft and moving again. So there's always some relief of it because like my pump and my toes get really irritated and it can have the tiniest fluid on there. And it's like right now I feel so stuck and congested. However, it's like when it's MOD, it gets into the toes and stuff.
Yeah, so thank you for saying that because I know a lot of times people feel like, well, if I just exercise on traditional lymphatic drainage, you can't just exercise, but there is a big difference when you're having that touch in massage therapy that is actually physically moving some of that lymph fluid. I know that you and I have worked together. So tell me a little bit about when you're feeling, I know that you do feel it, when you're feeling the lymphatic drainage with the hands on. Talk to me about how that feels and what you actually experienced during that time.
I do whenever, like, especially after you clear out my knee on my calf, that's when I really do, especially around my knee, actually, I take that back. When you're around my knee and I am sticky, I'm stuck, it's not fascias going on. Once it gets loose, I can sometimes feel that movement
Okay.
and you can just feel that flow going and getting loose. And it just like, it's just a pressure relief. It's kind of like popping ears, but
Yeah.
you're popping it out of your leg to make that feel better and everything. So it's just kind of a release. Like if you have an ear infection and like you're trying to get that fluid loose and you finally get it to pop for the final time, and that it's just had pressure relief. It's like a skin tension pressure relief where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm finally getting loose.
Oh,
Like
that's
that.
awesome. Yeah, so we see that you're wrapping. So it takes a lot sometimes when you're having more than just one modality. You have the wrapping, you have your own pump at
Mm-hmm.
home that you're doing, and then you're doing lymphatic drainage as well. But when you
Mm-hmm.
came to me, we started with a different treatment, which is called the endosphere. Talk to us a little bit about this is an endosphere, which is a 55 sphere rolling. That is a mechanism, a manual mechanism that we use along with the hands-on treatment. And I know that you've been enjoying that treatment. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that's kind of an addition to the MLD, and I'm to the point I've had it for I think 15 years. Someone can do the math, 2009, maybe 16, whatever it is. I've had it for so long, like I'm to the point where I'm doing anything I can since I'm stuck with this for the rest of my life. So when I came to you and we started doing that, I feel like I get a faster result and it kind of loosens it up faster. Since the big thing is I'm at this point, I'm not going to reduce in size. This is a big debate with insurance companies like, oh, you're not reducing, you're not reduction. It's like, yo, after 15, 16 years, there's only so much you can do. I'm maintaining it when it's a chronic condition like this. So when it comes to that, it's a quicker, faster release or a quicker sensation with it. And I strongly encourage people to do more of that type of stuff when it comes to it, because there has to be more than just MLD treatment to treat a chronic lymphedema patient with
Correct.
that. Like
Yeah.
I've also had things like the Lymphostar, which I've gotten some results for that. It kind of makes the fluid a little bit less thick. That's more not an immediate, like you don't see it right away. I see it maybe a few days
Over
later
time.
over time, where this is, I see it instantly. And then depending on how my leg is doing, what my body's going through, since lymphedema, like if you're having a crappy diet, it impacts your lymphedema. There's so
Sure.
much that goes into
The
your
lymphatic system.
lymphedema and your
Yeah.
lymphatic system that you can't control. With this, it's like depending on like my diet for the week and the heat, just my overall body health can last for a week or two. If I'm having a bad day, it's only a bad week, it's only a few days, but it contributes to the reduction or the maintenance. I should say.
Yes, that's for sure. And I have a book out now called Flow and Thrive that talks about the lymphatic health for us with your food and your dietary and actually having lymphatic drainage. So you're doing very well. I am very impressed with you because when I met you, I was like, wow, you have a whole routine when you come in and we start one area, then unwrap another area as you're going, and then you wrap back up. But I want to say that you're doing a very good job with your health. And so that's why I kind of wanted people to kind of listen to you and talk to you to let other people know that it's doable and that you do have a regimen and routine. So what would you say to someone what would you tell them to look for? What would you tell them to ask? What would you say if someone's getting newly diagnosed and maybe they haven't gotten diagnosed yet? Or what symptoms would you say that you would tell them to look out for the early stages?
I guess kind of looking back for like looking at early stages is if your swelling doesn't stay isolated. With me, it was like
Mhm.
like it started off in the foot, went to the ankle quickly, but then over like a month time frame, it started going up and up and up. And my mom, I just remember being in the kitchen. I think I was going to tennis since I played college tennis. So I was doing summer workout and she's like, Lori, your calves are two different sizes. And so if the swelling does not stay, like they were checking my like stress fractures,
Okay.
ankle stuff when they were first doing it, since they knew I was active and stuff. And the swelling just kept on going up, which also perplexed doctors. But at the same time, they weren't thinking, hey, lymphedema on a 19-year-old. So I would say start looking at that. And try. It's been a while since it's been so long when I first got it. And I also wasn't sure what I was looking for. Like maybe check the fluid. Like obviously over time, the fluid changes to getting hard, especially if you don't maintain it at all, but and just like constant going away no matter what you're doing, like swelling, like ibuprofen doesn't really treat lymphatics because it's protein based fluid, where like swelling is more water based if you broke your ankle or something.
Correct.
So I guess seeing how it reacts to typical things you would use when you break your ankle. Is it reacting? Is it not reacting? So things like that. Like but hold on, I just thought of something going back to your emotional health,
Mm-hmm.
and going back to the impacts of that.
Yes.
So you had the adding to the routine, lifestyle changes that you may not be ready for and stuff, but then there's also other things. And at first, I kind of was thinking like that will never happen to me. Like seriously, nah, like that won't happen. You also have to kind of be careful because if you cut yourself, you can get cellulitis. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily cutting yourself. It can be nicking yourself with a razor, putting on your compression hose, ingrown hair that just went ingrown because you're not wanting
Mm.
to shave. But cellulitis can cause an issue, and if it's not treated, it can actually kill you. Um, or put you in the hospital, like ICU and stuff, if you don't know what you're doing. Since my first cellulitis was like, oh, it's the flu, and it was not the flu. Yeah. So like other things like that, going back to your emotional health and stuff with that. And sorry, I kind of went back there since ADHD brain,
No, you're
ADD
doing
brain. Sorry.
No, you're fine, which, is another aspect of it where you're like, okay, I forget about this over time and I forgot about that. But I mean, you hit on a lot of good points talking about the hardness and how it goes from that hard state to soft state,
Hmm.
as well as the ingrown hairs and being able to have the cellulitis. There's other things that can go along with that. And, you're relatively young. So to have to deal with that as a young lady, to deal with, your leg and the wrapping and the getting up of those things, and then people, kind of like, what's going on with their leg? It's a lot to deal with, but you've always been upbeat and since I've met you. So,
Yeah.
and being able to see to be a positive aspect to other people who are dealing with it.
And like the other thing about cellulitis that I just remember since you mentioned fluid was the first time I got cellulitis, my fluid changed instantly. And ever since I had cellulitis back in, I believe, 2013, 2014, my fluid hasn't been the same. Like I've done stuff to get back to it and it almost got back to it. But then I got older and like just in general, once you get cellulitis, like I wouldn't say you're donezo, but it's a harder uphill battle than the
Okay.
original battle. So
Okay.
yeah.
So what would you say how your progression is going now and what stage are you in? And how are you doing now leveling out your mental and fluctuating every day outside of doing the treatments that we talked about?
I don't know what stage of lymphedema would you say I'm in? Like I actually
I
don't
would
know.
definitely think between 3. I don't think
Okay.
your thighs have been that tight as much, but definitely up to maybe like a stage 3
Yeah.
going to the knee.
Yeah, because I will say with my thighs, when I first got cellulitis, that was huge. But then I got the lymph node transferred and bypass with Dr. Chang at University of Chicago. And basically after he did that, because he did a lymph node branch from here and put it up on my thigh, I will say that's really helped my upper leg a lot and really made a difference with my upper leg.
So talk to us about that surgery when you
So.
had those lymph nodes rerouted for you.
So I will say that was the first big change to get kind of my fluid back to where it was after my first bout of cellulitis. Because after that, my leg just 100% went to crap. And what's aggravating about insurance companies, and when you start this journey, you'll find that insurance companies are very not fun to work with, is they almost kind of want you to get worse before you get better. And when it comes to lymphedema, instead of being proactive, they want to be reactive. So I still do this some days too. Whenever I'm having a bad lymphedema day, I'm just Googling the crap out of it and trying to figure out like the whys and the root causes, which may not always be possible. And I was having one of those days back in, I would say 2012 probably, and I found him at that time. He was at MD Anderson. And I scheduled an appointment with him. And sure enough, and this was before I even had a pump. So we met him. He talked to us. He's like, oh, you need to get a lymphoscintigraphy. So that's when I got my first lymphoscintigraphy. But then insurance denied it because they're like, well, you're only wrapping an NLD. You're not doing the pump. And it's like, okay. So I went back. We got a pump set up, all of that. And then back in 2013 was when I got my first round of cellulitis from an ingrown toenail. And I kind of once again had a meltdown, and it was kind of like the higher ups heard my mentalness of I can't do this. And so then ironically at that time I get a letter from his office saying that he's moving to the University of Chicago, since the other thing was MD Anderson would give like financial aid and stuff, but it was to a Texas residents, and the University of Chicago is private, so I could get financial aid. So I talked to a scheduler and we kind of got stuff going, and we resubmitted paperwork, and then the insurance company approved my surgery, but then it was an approval for 24 hours in May, and then it went into denial. At the time, the HR lady at the place I worked was phenomenal and basically called out the insurance company saying you can't approve it and reject it because we can do X, Y, Z. And basically then really was the one who pushed it through to get the insurance to recover. And they're like, okay, so we're going to make it active. However, we need to schedule the surgery, call the day before, we'll make it active or approve it, going through all these hula hoops. And then I got that surgery, and with the difference of that, so he moved the branch, so a lymph node branch is lymph nodes, vessels, fat, moved it down to like my upper leg area, thigh area, and then he did bypass, so he connected. So even though your circulatory vessels, they kind of get bigger throughout, and there's only a few spots in your ankles where they're about the same size. So he was able to make 3 connections to that to help the flow on the lower leg with that, since he said they need to be the same size of that. So that was also very helpful and did make a difference, and it still makes a difference. I kind of do it kind of like plastic surgery in a way of you get the boob job touch-ups. And sometimes like I think I do need like lymphatic touch-ups surgically somehow. This then I was talking to Dr. Ting over at Levine Cancer Center, and he actually studied under Dr. Chang, and we've been trying to do liposuction and stuff, and now that's my new arch nemesis with insurance, is trying to get that covered. But the thing with liposuction is you have to be a compliant patient. You can't just be like, oh, it's done, like I don't need to do it. And it's like you have to be compliant the whole time with that, which I feel like I'm pretty compliant, and it could help
for sure
with that.
Yeah, and the thing with liposuction, though, it brings on a whole nother level because they pump you with the fluid, and then you still probably have like almost a whole nother year of trying to keep the swelling down from the skin from the liposuction. So
because and then on top of it, you're trying to like you're kind of blindly like removing like the bad and good ones. Like you can't really tell what ones are bad vessels or bad fat or anything. And liposuction also creates swelling. So if you're also not doing a good treatment plan post it, like doing MLD more frequently, that then can contribute to more swelling. Liposuction is more of a hit or miss solution in the lymphatic community. Some say it's good, some say it's bad. I think it kind of depends on the patient and person in your situation.
Yeah, I think the lymphedema part, when you're having excess fat versus the excess fluid, would make a big difference of whether you're getting the fat cells out versus the disruption of the lymph vessels to be able to stop the fluid. But, well, everything's evolving. So we're grateful that you've gotten to Dr. Chang and a lot of different things that got rerouted to where you are today. Even though you still have, the leg difference, I think that you've done a really good job, and your leg is doing really well after surgery. I think I see you
I see
twice
twice a month. And sometimes it's depending on if I'm having a bad week and everything, and knowing my body, sometimes I do just go on your schedule like, okay, I can do Friday. You're not working Saturday, and go on Thursday or Friday.
Sure.
To help that. Like this, and then I just thought of something, another kind of misconception. This is to more non-medical personnel. It's interesting because whenever like a stranger comes up and talks to me and they're like, oh, what happened? What's wrong with your leg? First of all, if I know the person, I'm more open to talk about it, where like I have a relationship, they know me. It's not the first thing coming off of, like I just said hi to you on the corner, and like your first thing is, oh, what happened to your leg? I view it as, you don't come up to an amputee and say, hey, why did you lose your leg? In that sense, because I just find that rude when you're a stranger coming up to me asking why I have something on my leg. But if I kind of have a conversation going with you, and then if you're a medical person asking, it's because I can use different jargon. I can go straight to it. However, if it's a non-medical person, a lot of times, depending on the person and just their experiences and stuff, sometimes thinks it's just a fat leg. Well, I don't understand why I have to do this for a fat leg. And it's like, well, it's more than just a fat leg.
Correct.
It's not a fat leg.
Yeah.
It's so much more. If I had a fat leg, I wouldn't have thousands of dollars of medical bills like each year. And I wouldn't have to be fighting with insurance. I would love just to have a fat leg and go my separate way on that. And go about
Be able to exercise and work it
being able
off,
to
right?
exercise.
Yeah.
Going from there, I wouldn't have issues with like certain jeans. Like, I'm so glad skinny jeans are pushing this way out, because it was so hard to find certain skinny jeans to fit and be cool. Fashion sense wise, I usually ask like, oh, what you do for a living, and then figure out how in depth I can go and how I explain it to someone, since from an outside perspective, it's just a fat leg. And then it goes into like, even when you travel, compression hose are not cheap, especially if it's a custom made compression. Mine is a custom silver made compression with Juzo, which I have a love hate relationship with Juzo, but right now it's a brand I'm going with because their product is the best for what I need. Some doctors, some medical professionals go back and forth on the silver components of it. I think I am a component of silver, and I do think it does help me fight up cellulitis and stuff, but those cost a lot. I'm a 50C, like I said, silver, and they cost maybe like $300 to $500 depending on if insurance covering it or not. And it's like, if it's just a fat leg, I wouldn't be doing that. And if it's just a fat leg, I won't have to wash it every day. Since when I go on vacation, I have to be like, okay, I need to find a place with washer and dryers so I can wash my legs. And I've been on vacation where I've had friends be like, well, do you really need a washer and dryer? And it's like, well, do you rewear your underwear on a daily basis? So it's like, yeah, I do need a washer and dryer. And just working your way around that type of experiences too. And traveling is a whole another level of lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
So,
Which you do that well as well, but it is, and people need to realize that the whole lymphedema, even sometimes just taking compression holes, you still have to be able to wash them out, and you be able to have to wear them again if you're having, anywhere from diabetes or any other type of swelling and edema that comes on a regular basis. Making sure that you have things to maintain your health is very important as well.
yeah,
So, yeah. Well, thank you,
definitely.
Laura, so much for sharing your story. I was totally intrigued by you when I met you and how well you were taking care of everything. And I wanted to bring you on so that everyone else can have a chance, or maybe you know, hear your story and be able to know what to do if they're, experiencing those things. And so if you have a story of resilience or survival or expression, I'd love to hear from you. Leave some comments below and let us know. And don't forget to subscribe to Ways to Wellness so you can hear more of our health and personal journeys. Until next time, thank you and take care.